Welcome back to the A-Files podcast, and we're just going to jump right into it. Okay, so I plan to do a whole overview about how the Epstein emails came about, like how it was dropped. But then as I started really reading the emails, I actually think it's way better for me to just tell you what's in the emails because everyone else has that covered. Please go read the news on how it got dropped. Actually, let me just give you a quick overview. The U.S. House Oversight Committee last Wednesday, November 12th, dropped over 23,000 documents from the Epstein estate. The majority of them were from his Gmail email account, which is kind of wild. And the emails literally showcase his relationship with Trump and how deep it was, his hatred for Trump, but also how this single man, sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, had the international relations in a chokehold, from the US government to the Saudi government to the Russian government, everybody. Jeffrey Epstein knew everybody. Do you remember a few episodes ago? Because I have been covering the Epstein case. I really highly recommend you go review my other podcast about it because I give a timeline from the beginning to the end. I give updates on Prince Andrew and the email disgrace debacle. I give updates on Sarah Ferguson. I'm also currently reading Virginia Giuffre's memoir and I'm almost done and I'm going to do a whole review on that alone. I've been following this case for years, but I've had the podcast only for a couple months and I always just felt in my gut, it goes way deeper than what we know. So many people have said this. So many of us have been very adamant that this goes way deeper than just like Bill Clinton, Bill Gates allegedly, like it goes into international waters. And we were right. Everyone that thought that, we were all correct because Donald J. Trump is a horrible liar. He's a great manipulator, but a horrible liar. Can you be? Because I think you can tell the truth and be manipulative about it, like use someone's truth against them, like blackmail, what Jeffrey Epstein did to a million people. But at the end of the day, the people he was blackmailing people that he was blackmailing, they were doing some dodgy shit. Okay, like some really dodgy stuff. So for Trump, I mean, he's running away scared because he has been telling us for years and years that he did not have a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. As soon as he found out he was a creep, Trump said he got rid of his Mar-a-Lago membership right away, and that was that. But no, Mr. President, you were involved. You had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein and Trump had a relationship during his first term. Because Jeffrey Epstein wrote that in the emails. He wrote that he was at Trump Tower for Thanksgiving with Trump and the Trump boys in 2017. Trump allegedly has been lying this whole time. And in fact, there has been many news resources from CNN to MSNBC, News Nation, etc., even just independent podcasters. They are saying that Donald Trump is the number one person named within the Epstein emails. Like he has the most amount of attraction. Like his name has brought up the most, right? Okay, so I'm just going to read some to you just so you can understand the scope at what level we're at with this administration, aka regime. So back in 2018, we're just going to fast forward to 2018 because this is during Trump's first term, okay? And Mark Epstein is Jeffrey Epstein's brother, all right? So Mark writes to Jeffrey Epstein in 2018. He says, "How are you doing? A while back you mentioned that you were pre-diabetic. Has anything changed with that? What is your boy Donald up to now?" Okay, keep in mind, Donald Trump was president at this time. Jeffrey replies saying, "All good, Bannon with me." So Bannon is Steve Bannon, okay? And y'all know who Steve Bannon is. Mark replies and says, "Ask him if Putin has the photos of Trump blowing Bubba." As you can see, that's highlighted here. So this is why everyone's linking this to Bill Clinton. Bubba's Bill Clinton's nickname, and that's actually a very well-known name in the political space. That rings a bell to me. It may ring a bell to you. And as you know, Bill Clinton has allegedly been a part of this Epstein ring. He knew Jeffrey Epstein. I will say in the emails, Jeffrey Epstein did explicitly say Bill Clinton has not been to the island, but we also do have to recognize not all of the bad illegal sex trafficking stuff happened just at that island, okay? So Jeffrey Epstein had the world in a chokehold. And so everyone took this sentence and ran with it, and they kept saying that Trump gave Bill Clinton a you know what. Mark did come out and yesterday, literally on Sunday, November 16th, and said that Bubba was not Bill Clinton. They were not talking about Bill Clinton, et cetera, et cetera. But I kind of believe it. I do have to believe it, unfortunately. I do not think Trump did that to Bill Clinton, but I do think that they had an inappropriate relationship, and you can take that as you will. So that's one of the emails I just kind of wanted to highlight in the beginning. Now, I want to talk about Virginia Giuffre really quickly. I'm very, very protective of her. And I really highly recommend you all read Nobody's Girl, her memoir. And even before this, I was very protective of her, but in particular, now I am, especially when you understand her history growing up, all of that. I will say Virginia Giuffre did say that Trump had never done anything to her. Okay, she did say that publicly. However, the emails tell a different story. And her testimony that we do not have access to because they're within the files that Trump and the administration keep wanting to hide from us. And we don't really understand why, Mr. Trump. Although he did say, actually, on Sunday last night that we should release the files. But I'm going to talk about that later because it's more complicated than you think. Anyways, I just want to go back to Virginia Giuffre. And as you can see from this email, Jeffrey Epstein back in 2011 wrote to Ghislaine Maxwell. And he says, I want you to realize that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Victim, they redacted the name, obviously, spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. Ghislaine replies to him saying, I have been thinking about that. Now, you can take that as you will. I'm taking this because you remember Trump said he didn't know anybody. He's never been a part of the ring. Didn't know Jeffrey Epstein like that. But for Jeffrey Epstein to say that Trump hasn't barked, take that as you will. One may say he supposedly hasn't barked because he's as guilty as Jeffrey Epstein. One may also say he hasn't barked because he has nothing to hide. But if you have nothing to hide, release the files and stop trying to indict people. That's all I gotta say. Now, this email, I will mention that the Democrats have said that the victim within this email that Jeffrey Epstein is referring to mentions Virginia Giuffre's name. So you can take that as you will. She said previously that Trump never did anything to her. Now, her name has been listed here as the victim. I also want you all, when you make your own conclusion, to remember that when Virginia was fighting for her rights and fighting for justice, she was also terrified because there were a lot of people in power, especially Trump, and he became president, which is the number one most power, right? I could also understand that in the moment you're fearing your life, she did commit suicide this year, that you sometimes still want to save yourself in a way and not fully tell your whole experience. And I can understand when you're in a fight or flight moment or in a situation that sometimes you say things to hide the truth a little bit because the person that you're accusing is of so much power that you're so fearful. Now, I do find it interesting that potentially, supposedly, allegedly, Virginia did feel comfortable to at least state her truth to a government official of the FBI or whoever first took down these documents. I would assume the FBI did the investigation initially, right? To where she did feel comfortable saying that. So it's really up to the authorities and the people that represent us to release the files so we can see it in her own words and understand it in her own words, okay? I know that's very complicated what I just said, but I think it's really important to just look at both sides when you are considering Trump's involvement with Virginia Giuffre. That's all. Okay, another creepy email was towards Tom Barrack. And Tom Barrack is a name that constantly gets brought up. And I just want to also make a distinction. It is not Barack. Some people are thinking whenever Epstein mentions Barrack, he's misspelling Barack, like Barack Obama. No, another thing is Epstein's spelling is horrible. Actually, everybody's spelling in these emails are horrible because they're using it like a text message, iMessenger, like Pete Hegseth on Signal, and they cannot write. They can't spell. It's horrible. So as I'm talking, I'm reading out verbatim what they're saying. I mean, I'm putting it up on the screen too so you can see it, but so it's just horrendous. Billionaires, rich people, all these people that we give all our money to can't spell for shit. So Tom Barrack is an American private equity real estate investor. He's just like a gazillionaire. So he's very rich and affluent within that community, the Epstein community, okay? But look how gross this is. So Jeffrey Epstein writes to Tom Barrack and he says, "Hope you're well. Photos look good. FYI, I receive many calls a week about both Donald and then it's blacked out, Marla, beauty contests, and Mar-a-Lago." Okay, so Marla is Marla Maples, Donald's ex-wife, one of his ex-wives, okay? So that's who he's referring to here. Okay, and Clinton from Reporters. Less so recently with Clinton, but my answers are always, I have nothing to say, or I try to ignore altogether. A few times I have been ambushed on the street with questions, but I am more careful now. So that's what Jeffrey says to Epstein. That's what Jeffrey says to Tom Barrack. And then Tom Barrack replies and says, "Hope you're good. Let's catch up." Jeffrey Epstein then has the nerve, this is disgusting, and he goes, "Send photos of you and child. Make me smile." And the thing is, given his history, and this was in 2016, given his history, his guilty conviction of sex trafficking minors, you ask for a photo of him and his child, you freak? Absolutely not. So that's how gross this is. Don't ask for a picture of a child with your history. And Barack, I want to know, did you send a picture of your child to this convicted sex offender of minors? Vile. All right, the next email. So Thomas Landon is a New York Times reporter, and he had been working with Epstein or corresponding with Epstein back in 2015. And because I think this is when Epstein started to just have enough. He was sick of Donald Trump. And so he started, he got Michael Wolff and he started giving little tidbits to reporters about how gross Donald is. And so here's an interaction here. New York Times reporter Landon Thomas tells Epstein, "Now everyone's coming to me thinking I have juicy info on you and Trump. Because of this," he quotes, "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy." Trump booms from a speakerphone. He's a lot of fun to be with. It's even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it. Jeffrey enjoys his social life. The Times reporter goes, "That story will never die." Jeffrey Epstein replies to the reporter about the quote from Trump and goes, "Read the ooze feed Ari my airplane logs and Hawaiian tropic contest / have them ask my houseman about Donald almost walking through a door, leaving his nose print on the glass as young women were swimming in the pool, and he was so focused he walked straight through the door." I'm 100% convinced Jeffrey Epstein knew what he was doing. He was treating his emails like it was text messages, but he was incriminating everybody. It was all for blackmail. This is all for blackmail. Jeffrey Epstein knew exactly what he was doing. What a freaking creep. Another email with Landon Thomas. He says this to Jeffrey Epstein in 2016. "I'm kind of shocked that our reporters did not contact you, Ari Trump/women's story. Seems to me he got off rather lightly. How are you doing?" Jeffrey Epstein replies, "Me too." I'm also surprised, Thomas. New York Times need to be investigated. The reporters, why didn't you follow up this case? Another random email from 2017 was from Jeffrey Epstein to an unknown, or it was from an unknown person to Jeffrey Epstein. And they say, I'm at the door, but I will wait for my time. I don't want to come in early to find Trump in your house. And I will say, the House Oversight Committee, they did mention that this was one of the victims. What was Trump doing in the house? Thought that was just random. In 2018, going back to the New York Times reporter, just because he knew a lot, Landon Thomas knew a lot. He wrote to Jeffrey Epstein saying, no doubt he and DT, I'm assuming that's Donald Trump, know each other well too. Have to say, he's looking and sounding increasingly unhinged. Are you tempted to take any money off the table in the markets? Jeffrey replies, no, but no questions, Donald's statement is goofy. Early dementia, question mark? The New York Times reporter replies and says, you be the judge. Wasn't here a time when he at least completed sentences, question mark? And then sends an Atlantic article about Trump's cognitive decline. Again, I'm trying to read the words verbatim. I sound like an idiot, but I promise you, they're the idiots. But how interesting is this from 2018? Because now, these days, do you remember Trump bragging about his MRI results, bragging about his cognitive tests, picking out the right colors and right animal shapes? And little did we know he was allegedly having dementia issues back in the day. That's crazy. But also, once again, what is Jeffrey Epstein doing knowing so much about Donald Trump? The New York Times reporter, Landon Thomas, I would love for him to do a sit down and just talk about everything because he clearly knows a lot more. Now, this email is crazy. Okay, so Reed Warrington, Weingarten, I don't even know. Reed Weingarten, whoever this guy is. He was Epstein's lawyer. And so he wrote to his lawyer. Jeffrey goes, if not Florida, do you have any plans to be in New York next week? Reed replies, going to Florida, then end of week New York City. Jeffrey goes, Thursday, New York, my birthday's Friday. Reed replies saying, craziest shit happening, trying to deliver El Chapo to Barack instead of Trump. Figuring out my schedule next week, will let you know. Tom Barack? You see, this is where they thought it was Barack Obama. Also, it's 2017, Barack wasn't president then, but Trump was. So why was he delivering El Chapo to Tom Barack, the investment manager, instead of Trump? You see what does El Chapo? Who does Jeffrey Epstein know? This is the ties go so deep. I mean, the emails go on and on and on. I just think this is the beginning. Steve Bannon is a huge part of it, and they texted constantly. Steve Bannon, in 2016, Jeffrey Epstein wrote to Boris Nikolic. Who is Boris? Wrote to Boris Nikolic. He's a Serbian fashion designer. And he said back in 2016, Boris asked him, when are you back in New York City? Jeffrey goes, 4th, I'm in Palm with all the Trump boys. Fun. And that's another thing I noticed. Jeffrey Epstein would always use the word fun. He'd be like, Trump delegate, fun. Something, fun. Let's do this again. Fun. It was fun. It's just so creepy. Aside from the emails, there were also sworn affidavits within the documents that were released. And one in particular was from 2016, Katie Johnson's case. And she accused Trump and Epstein of assaulting and raping her and doing horrific things to her, allegedly, when she was 13. Okay? I have it right here. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. This document says that it included forcible rape that took place at several parties of defendant Epstein's during the summer of 1994 in New York City. And during that period, she was only 13 years old. Within this document, it also mentions that defendant Donald Trump that defendant Donald Trump attended 4 of the parties that she attended. She understood that both Mr. Trump and Mr. Epstein knew she was 13 years old. Trump allegedly had sexual contact with her at the 4 different parties in the summer of 1994. And on the 4th and final sexual encounter with defendant Trump, tied her to the bed, exposed himself to her, and then proceeded to rape her forcibly. During the course of this savage sexual attack, she pleaded with Trump to stop, but he did not. Trump responded to her pleas, allegedly, by violently striking her in the face with an open hand and screamed at her that he would do whatever he wanted. It goes on, and I'm going to post these here. As you can see, it's highlighted. Somebody obviously highlighted this, and it's really, really a tough read, but do read it, okay? She said that she was hired by Mr. Epstein from the years 1991 to 2000. She was 13, you guys. 13 years old. It's just absolutely disgusting that these people are in power. I think it's worse than we think. Trump is going at great lengths to stop the files from coming out. Now, I want you to understand, this is just the emails. The files it's completely different evidence. This right here is a whole set of different evidence. Does that make sense? It's bad. It's bad. And so I just want to point out, so as of today, November 17th, Trump yesterday called for the files to be released. However, he's done that to save face because he has also called for investigations into certain people that are mentioned within the files, such as Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Michael Cohen, and etc. And because he's called for an investigation and Pam Bondi, the head of the DOJ, has accepted it, they cannot release files when there's a pending or an ongoing investigation. So technically, the majority of the files cannot be released if it has certain people's names within it. Now, I am not a full lawyer. This is what I'm understanding. And obviously, this is really basic terms. Do go research it, but that's where we're at. Now, tomorrow, Tuesday, November 18th, is a huge day in the United States because the House is going to vote for the files to be released because now they have all of the signatures to proceed. And so it's going to be very telling how many Republicans vote against it. And I need you to pay attention to who is voting against the files being released, okay? And we're going to talk about it tomorrow when it happens. I will say there are a ton of Republicans starting to flip. And you all know Marjorie Taylor Greene has been a big one. Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Trump have been publicly feuding. And Trump says the downfall with Trump and the fallout all comes down to the Epstein files. And now Marjorie Taylor Greene has said she's been getting death threats and all that stuff. So she has been even more vocal that it's because of the Epstein files and the Trump administration trying to hide it that she is now fearful of her life. Now, I can't stand Marjorie Taylor Greene. Her politics, I don't believe it. And I know that I'm suspicious of this reversal in her politics. But I'm going to say this now. Let her do what she's doing, because whatever she's doing is really rocking the MAGA base. And a lot of them are flipping with her to get these files out. Do I agree with her politics in general? No. But I absolutely agree what she's doing here with the Epstein files. 100%. And no one can knock her for it. Let them do it. Let them go. Let the Republican Party, the GOPs, the MAGAs, all crumble within each other, because that's what they're doing, because they're realizing the people that they voted into office are absolute frauds and pedophiles and convicted rapists, et cetera, allegedly. The vote, I do believe, is going to... So what's going to happen, right? This is how it's going to happen. It's going to go to the House floor. They're going to vote. I do believe it's going to pass. It's then going to go to the Senate. Now, the Senate, I'm curious about, because the Senate, they really do have some hardcore Trumpers, like Lindsey Graham, all of them, okay? Now, a few Republican GOPs have come out, like Ted Kennedy, Rand Paul, saying they will vote to release the files. So I'm very curious of what goes on there. After that, it then needs to go to the president. and Donald J. Trump has to sign and release the files. Now, the question is, will it even get to his desk via the Senate? If the Senate push it through, does Trump sign the papers to be released? Now, that you also have to remember. He's also called into investigations into certain people. I feel like he's perfectly set it up. So like I have nothing to worry about. Sign it. But then we're not getting all the information. Now, I really also want that video. Do you remember of Epstein, his suicide? And they cut out 60 seconds of him leaving allegedly the jail cell or him hanging himself. I want the full video. I hope that's in the files. So there's a lot going on. And I know I went through this really quickly, and I know I'm a bit later on this, but I'm watching, I'm paying attention, I'm reading. And I hope you all are too, because Epstein is claiming that Trump spent hours with trafficking and raping victims inside of his home. The House representatives identified that as the late Virginia Giuffre, one of Epstein's most prominent victims, who died by suicide in April. She never got her justice. She also never implicated Trump either in any wrongdoing in her book or in public. You all know the severity of this case, okay? Just really think and do your research and come up with any opinions for yourself. Epstein also said that Trump knew about the girls. Epstein had ties to Russia. Epstein had ties to Ukraine. Epstein had ties to the Middle East. Epstein had ties to a whole bunch of people. He was hanging out with the Trump boys. He was there for Thanksgiving. He, even up until 2018, he told people in the emails that he believes Trump is evil beyond belief and he's mad and he feels alone because he's nuts. This was in March of 2018. It's really, really bad. And I'm going to keep an eye out for any news source that kind of highlights the important emails, the ones, and I'm going to really highlight them here because there's just 20,000 of them. And I'm sure people are still going through them like myself. But it's bad. And I'm very anxious to see how this vote goes tomorrow. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. This Epstein thing is starting to pick up and it's not going away. We've said this many, many times. All right. See you for the next one. Bye.